Hello friends, welcome to PulsePoint. In this episode, Pharmac moves to demedicalise abortion. Attempts to silence an anti-abortion campaigner in Australia. Trump's day one promises, we highlight a few that could change the world. And it's time for us to stand against abortion and march for life. This and much more to come. Let's get into it. I'm James Williams. Pharmac says it is demedicalising abortion in its latest move to fund at-home testing kits. The Crown entity has this week announced it will fund the urine-based test kits so that those who choose to kill their baby in the womb by taking a pill can make sure that the baby is actually dead. Pharmac says more than 9,000 New Zealanders will have access to these kits in the first year of funding. This means we, as taxpayers, are paying to demedicalise abortion. This is simply a further attempt to normalise and make it easier to undertake this evil act. Also, on the 9,000 people set to use the kits, let's put that into perspective. In its 2023 report on abortion, the Ministry of Health showed that in 2022 there were 14,164 abortions. Now, we have since received information from the Ministry that 2023 statistics show abortions increasing even more to 16,277. The Ministry's statistics also showed that in 2022, for the first time ever, early medical abortions, or EMAs, e.g. taking the pills, outnumbered surgical abortions. See on the graph there it says that in 2022 there were 7,171 EMA procedures. Again, updated figures show an increase in 2023 to more than 10,000 early medical abortions. As we can see, abortion rates continue to skyrocket. More women are now taking a pill to kill their unborn child, and Pharmac are so supportive of this that they're providing kits to make sure they've done the job. Across the ditch now, an anti-abortion campaigner, Dr. Joanna Howe, has been banned from the South Australian Parliament in what she says is a hit job in an attempt to silence her. Dr. Howe, a professor of law at University of Adelaide, had involvement in preparing the forced birth law, which would have seen late-term abortions stopped in favour of the babies being birthed alive and adopted out. The legislation was narrowly outvoted and failed to progress. According to Legislative Council President Terry Stevens, he received several complaints of intimidating behaviour by Dr. Howe. On her social media, Joanna Howe denies the claims, saying and calling it a hit job.
The first inkling I had that I was going to get banned was when I was speaking to an ABC journalist on the 23rd of October. It was a Wednesday, and she was writing a piece on my Baby Killers Club post-series. All the baby killers were getting their knickers in a twist and they were getting hysterical because they felt unsafe because I'd called them baby killers, which is what they are. But, you know, it was a bit of a media firestorm for 24 hours over that post-series. The thing was, at the end of the interview, she just threw in a question: do you have any comment about the fact that people are calling for you to get banned from the SA Parliament? Now, I nearly fell off my chair because I'd literally never heard that. Getting banned is a really serious thing. A member of the public getting banned from the People's House, I figure you have to have crossed a pretty big line for that, you know, like threats of violence or actual violence or threatening to burn the house down or threatening people's kids, like, you know, pretty outrageous kind of stuff. And I knew that I wasn't even close to that line. When Terry Stevens made his statement, which was so untrue about me, but I knew it was just going to be repeated everywhere across the entire media, and he was basically calling me a bully, I knew that, oh gosh, maybe this is it. Maybe this stops me from ever being able to be effective in the pro-life space again, because they've framed me as a bully, they've stitched me up, and they've got all the power and they can just do this. What has happened here, though, is parliamentary privilege has been abused by a cowardly cabal of pro-abortion MPs who have fed lies to Terry Stevens, who then repeats them as part of his statement to assassinate my character and good name. And another way this becomes so sinister is that they actually collude with the media and they use this parliamentary privilege to say lies about me in the parliament, and they leak it in advance to pro-abortion media like Tori Shepherd, who can then write her hit pieces in advance. But then after it's been said in the parliament, the media gets something called a limited privilege, where they can quote verbatim the things that have been said in Parliament, and then it is used to further assassinate me and destroy my...
Joanna Howe says the ban has not been given any expiration date, so could be forever. Dr Howe also says she has not been given a chance to respond to the claims, nor any way to seek justice. Still in Australia, a bill which aims to limit free speech continues to make its way through Parliament. The Combating Misinformation and Disinformation Bill 2024 had another reading last week and seemingly has one final hurdle to jump, the Australian Senate, before it officially becomes law. It would see the Australian Communications and Media Authority deem what is categorised misinformation and disinformation. Social media companies would need to quickly stop the information or risk massive fines. Sky News recently produced this commentary.
And one of the important things here is that the government makes a big deal of saying, oh, well, you know, it doesn't target individual users. And what that means is actually what they're doing is they're outsourcing censorship to the social media platforms. And we know they're already really, really bad at that. So if you want to see information throttled online, just pass this bill. It's already happening. But the other thing, too, is it creates two tiers of free speech in this country. So if you're a journalist like us, or you're an academic, or, you know, you're in government, you have free speech. You're freer speech. You have more exceptions to this rule than if you're everybody else. But we know that sources like X wind up being actually very good with their citizen journalists who aren't formal journalists, not working for, you know, News Corp or the ABC, able to find out lots of things that are important but get throttled as misinformation, Rita.
The current bill has exemptions, for example, information used for satire or parody, or information as part of news, scientific, academic, artistic or religious content. Now, both this story and the previous should be very concerning, given we have seen New Zealand's governing bodies follow Australia's lead on many occasions. Now that the US election is all done, many are looking to President-elect Donald Trump keeping his numerous day one promises. While we won't have time to cover them all today, we will look at three. We will start with Trump saying that he will free prisoners wrongly targeted by the Biden administration, including pro-lifers.
These Marxists and Stalinists and the administration got a Washington, D.C. jury to convict 5 pro-life activists who are now facing up to 11 years in prison for simple acts of protest. You read all about it, you hear all about it, and you talk all about it. Under Biden, others are being sentenced to 10, 15, and even 20 years in prison for retribution for their political beliefs, while Antifa and other groups burned down cities like Portland, like Minneapolis. They went into Seattle. What they did in Seattle was they basically took over a big percentage of the city. They kill people, they loot, they plunder, and they go free. The political repression is immoral, and it's very, very un-American, and it's very dangerous for them to be playing that game. To reverse these cruel travesties of justice, tonight I'm announcing that the moment I win the election, I will appoint a special task force to rapidly review the cases of every political prisoner who's been unjustly persecuted by the Biden administration. Well, you know what's going on better than anybody, so that I can study the situation very quickly and sign their pardons or commutations on day one. I want to sign them on day one. I want to see what's going on. It's a horrible thing that's happening. 22 years, 18 years, 10 years. It's a terrible thing. There's never been a thing like this happen in our country. Never again will the federal government be used to target the religious believers, and that's what they're doing. They're targeting many people, but also, and in particular, religious believers.
Donald Trump has also stated he will move to restrict trans rights.
The left-wing gender insanity being pushed on our children is an act of child abuse. Very simple. Here's my plan to stop the chemical, physical, and emotional mutilation of our youth. On day one, I will revoke Joe Biden's cruel policies on so-called gender-affirming care. Ridiculous. A process that includes giving kids puberty blockers, mutating their physical appearance, and ultimately performing surgery on minor children. Can you believe this? I will sign a new executive order instructing every federal agency to cease all programs that promote the concept of sex and gender transition at any age. I will then ask Congress to permanently stop federal taxpayer dollars from being used to promote or pay for these procedures and pass a law prohibiting child sexual mutilation in all 50 states. It'll go very quickly. I will declare that any hospital or healthcare provider that participates in the chemical or physical mutilation of minor youth will no longer meet federal health and safety standards for Medicaid and Medicare and will be terminated from the program immediately. Furthermore, I will support the creation of a private right of action for victims to sue doctors who have unforgivably performed these procedures on minor children. The Department of Justice will investigate Big Pharma and the big hospital networks to determine whether they have deliberately covered up horrific long-term side effects of sex transitions in order to get rich at the expense of vulnerable patients, in this case, very vulnerable. We will also investigate whether Big Pharma or others have illegally marketed hormones and puberty blockers, which are in no way licensed or approved for this use. My Department of Education will inform states and school districts that if any teacher or school official suggests to a child that they could be trapped in the wrong body, they will be faced with severe consequences, including potential civil rights violations for sex discrimination and the elimination of federal funding. As part of our new credentialing body for teachers, we will promote positive education about the nuclear family, the roles of mothers and fathers, and celebrating rather than erasing the things that make men and women different and unique. I will ask Congress to pass a bill establishing that the only genders recognized by the United States government are male and female, and they are assigned at birth. The bill will also make clear that Title IX prohibits men from participating in women's sports, and we will protect the rights of parents from being forced to allow their minor child to assume a gender which is new and an identity without the parents' consent. The identity will not be new, and it will not be without parental consent. No serious country should be telling its children that they were born with the wrong gender, a concept that was never heard of in all of human history. Nobody's ever heard of this, what's happening today. It was all when the radical left invented it just a few years ago. Under my leadership, this madness will end.
And Trump is also supporting the growing movement of homeschooling.
When I'm reelected, I will do everything I can to support parents who make the courageous choice of homeschool. Under the Trump tax cuts, we allowed families to use 529 education savings accounts to spend up to $10,000 a year tax-free on tuition for grades K through 12. This was a tremendous win for school choice, very important, school choice, remember that term. And yet that benefit did not apply to homeschoolers. So to support the growing homeschool movement, in my next term, I will immediately fight to allow homeschool parents the same incredible benefit, $10,000 a year per child, completely tax-free to spend on costs associated with homeschool education. I will also work to ensure that every homeschool family is entitled to full access to the benefits available to non-homeschool students, including participating in athletic programs, clubs, after-school activities, educational trips, and more.
And we hope that the President-elect will honour these promises. There is also hope that these changes may influence similar sentiment throughout the world. There have been mixed reactions to the Trans and Pregnant documentary, which was aired on TVNZ this week. It follows a woman who now identifies as a man as she bears a child. Comments on social media range from calling it shocking or disgusting, while others were more literal in their description by saying it's a woman with facial hair having a baby with a bisexual man. Here are a few short clips.
I worry about the wider perceptions on society, both as a bi person myself and Frankie being a trans gay man. Our dream is to have the child as naturally as possible.
I'd known very early on that I wanted to have kids myself, and so you can imagine being about 6 years old and trying to reconcile this. I'm a man and I identify as a man, but also this desire to carry and have your own children is quite complicated. I mean, even to the point I'd gone and had a consultation about having a hysterectomy, and they said to me, "Frankie, are you sure you don't want to have kids?" And I couldn't answer that question, so I went away and I thought about it. And I suppose it was part of decoupling the idea of being able to have kids with the idea of that being inherently feminine.
Anything about Frankie being trans or having had those hormonal replacement therapies that may impact on pregnancy?
There should not be, because once the uterus has had a period of time away from the suppression of the testosterone, it's an amazing organ, actually. It can respond to the estrogens and progesterones that pregnancy involves, and the pregnancy should progress in a normal way.
I think being pregnant would have been extremely challenging if I hadn't have had top surgery, just because of the dysphoria attached to it. As good as the milk is for them, but I think that would have put me into needing acute mental health support. Do you want some milk, Bubba?
This week's McBlog has more detail on the documentary. Be sure to tune in on the Family First website or on our social media sites. And finally, it's time for you and I to stand against the killing of babies in the womb. On Saturday, 7th of December, you have an opportunity to give up some of your very valuable time to March for Life on the streets of Wellington. Given that in the last 3 decades, the leaders of every country in the world, except for around 20 countries, have turned their back on defending the unborn to some degree. Well, it's now up to us, the people, to bear witness to this horrific act. If we don't do it, who will? This year's guest speaker is Quiana Casimir. Be sure to watch her Family Matters interview with Simon O'Connor this week. Please also make sure to visit marchforlife.nz for more details about the upcoming event. Thank you for watching PulsePoint. You can check out more on our website familyfirst.nz. I'm James Williams. See you next week.